All right, Shalom and Barakatham. Blessings to you, believing Akim and Akwath, brothers and sisters. It's the brother Sagalah, back with another lesson on the Spirit. And I'm going to start here in the book of Jude, which is a short letter and a very short book. But it goes into the history of our people, dealing with those that are have been the wicked throughout time, the wicked that's among the children of Israel. And I'm going to start here, but I want to give all praises, infinite honor, and glory to the God of heaven and earth, Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rakah Kodash. All praises be to the Most High God, Yahweh, and His only begotten Son, whose name is Yahushai. So here in Jude, you see the warnings of history to the ungodly. That's the title here. The warnings of history to the ungodly. So there's a history of our people being rebellious, wicked, stiff-necked, ungodly, meaning turning away from the Most High. So this is the warning that's here that Jude has given us. And this actually applies to today, because it's always applied from the beginning to the end. The things that were written aforetime, as it says in Romans 15:4, were written for our learning. So the things written before, we can apply them to now, because there's nothing new under the sun. It tells us in the book of Ecclesiastes, the first chapter. Now, here in Jude 1 and 4, going into that warning, I'm going to read it in the NLT, which is on the right-hand side. Jude 1 and 4, it says, I say this because some ungodly people have wormed their way into your churches. So there's ungodly people today that's in the knowledge of this truth, that's in the faith. It says, I say this because some ungodly people have wormed their way into your churches. So amongst all the believers, no matter what the affiliation is, the camp designation, the group, whatever the case is, there's righteous men and ungodly men, no matter what gathering or congregation of people. How many doesn't matter. According to the scriptures, there's amongst the believers, which will be the churches today, starting with the household of faith, you would have those that would be ungodly, and you would have those that would be upright or be righteous in the sight of the Most High. It says, and have wormed their way into your churches, saying that the Most High's marvelous grace allows us to live immoral lives. The condemnation of such people was recorded long ago, for they have denied your only master, Adonai Nawa Yahushai HaMashiach, because they're not actually in the spirit, nor do they have faith truly in the scriptures. And I'm going to speak about that today. Now, those that have wormed their ways through, into the churches, how did this actually happen? There has to be an explanation. Well, this truth, this understanding of the word, it's like a magnet. It's like a magnet. It attracts good and bad. Because how would those that would be ungodly, how would they be amongst the churches today? The scriptures making it clear to us. How would they have been, and how would they be? And why would this be a history going back into the children of Israel? Matthew 13, the words of Yahushai, our Lord and Savior. And this is the parable of the fishing net. Matthew 13 and verse 47, it says, again, the kingdom of heaven, which starts with this knowledge, is the kingdom of heaven, is like unto a net. So this knowledge is like a net. Is like unto a net that was cast into the sea and gathered of every kind, which when it was full, they drew to shore and sat down and gathered the good into vessels, but cast away, it says, but cast the bad away. So you have the good that are brought in through this net. The World Wide Web can be likened unto this net, the internet, which is how a lot of people hear about the truth. Some actually come across the camps as well, face to face, or they hear by word of mouth. But it's through the internet that a lot of people come into the knowledge of the Bible, about the history of the Israelites and the truth of it. Now, it says, and gather together the good into vessels, but cast the bad away. So the good and the bad, which the truth is a magnet for righteous men and for wicked men, for righteous women and wicked women. Verse 49, the words of Yahweh Shai, so shall it be at the end of the world. So we're here at the end of the world. So you got righteous men and wicked men that's amongst the churches. The angel shall come forth and sever the wicked from among the just. So the Most High is, through sifting, but ultimately through the angels, the Alahayim in the Hebrew, actually separating the elect from the non-elect, from the chosen and the just from the unjust, the ungodly, the wicked, those that are not counted amongst the righteous. So that's because the truth is a magnet. And this parable makes it pretty clear. Now, let's continue on, because to his righteous men and wicked men that's in the midst, of those that will be believers or in the what's known as the circumcision. Now let's go to Matthew, the 23rd chapter. This is Matthew 23, and I'll start here at verse 15. Matthew 23 and verse 15. It says, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees. These are the words of Yahweh Shai as well. Red letter. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. It says, for ye compass sea and land to make one proselyte, that will be a newly converted believer. And when he is made, ye make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. So you have those that are out, that are profitable to many, but are not profitable unto their own selves. Now, you have those that have taught many and have gathered and have done the work and labor in the spirit of Yahweh Shem Shai. And whoever the righteous are and the elect, well, the Most High is going to justify who the elect are. Men don't get to do that. Hardly do we guess it right. We know in part, we prophesy in part. So the Most High is going to justify who's righteous and who's not. So it says, there will be the wicked among us, and Yahweh Shai speaking of the Pharisees, the scribes and the Pharisees. And he called them hypocrites. Now, the point I want to go into here in Matthew 23 and 15, going into the ungodly that's among the righteous within the churches, as it was speaking about in Jude, is here it says, for ye compass sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he is made, ye make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. So you got men that are out, that are actually following other believers, other men in the faith, but the ungodly of our people, are actually being led out of the way, because there's certain men that crept in unawares that are teachers, that are promoters of the scriptures, but deceitful workers of iniquity. And the Most High is going to expose that, as we read that, in Matthew the 13th chapter, the 49th verse, the angels are going to separate the wicked from the just. Now, twofold more, or twice more the child of hell than yourselves. So now the wicked, let me just get this to bring that home. This is in the book of Ecclesiasticus 27 should be. So this is Ecclesiasticus 27. And I'll start in verse 5. Ecclesiasticus 27 and 5. It says, the furnace proveth the potter's vessels. So the furnace of affliction. Right? That proves, that's how the Most High proves the gold and the silver, which would be the believers. The furnace proveth the potter's vessels, so that the trial of man is in his reasoning. The fruit declareth if the tree have been dressed, so you will know them by their fruit. So is the utterance of a conceit in the heart of a man. So you would know them by their fruit, but hardly do we guess it right. So the Most High, is showing forth and will show forth when you read in the scriptures, Zechariah 13 and verse 7 is a good example where it tells us that the Most High, he's going to smite the shepherd and the sheep are going to scatter. Ezekiel, the 14th chapter, the 9th to 11th verse, he says he's going to remove, the ungodly, the unrighteous from amongst his people, roughly paraphrasing. So now, it says, the fruit declareth if the tree have been dressed, if it's of the Most High. So is the utterance of a conceit in the heart of a man. Praise no man before thou hearest him speak, for this is the trial of men, because you have a lot of men that put men on pedestals. They believe that that's okay, and that's fine, because everyone is back here at this time playing out their part. But it says to praise no man before thou hearest him speak, for this is the trial of men. If thou followest righteousness, thou shalt obtain her, speaking of wisdom, and put her on as a glorious long robe. The birds will resort unto their like. Here's the point. The birds will resort unto their like, so will truth return unto them that practice in her. So the birds, it's a saying in the world that birds of a feather flock together. Well, that's right here in the scriptures. Sirach 27 or Ecclesiasticus 27:9, the birds will resort unto their like. So you have men in the faith that take a liking to certain people, maybe their teacher style, their level of understanding, how long they've been in the faith, whatever the case is. So people are attracted, just like the truth attracts those that are good and those that are unrighteous, those that are righteous and those that are unrighteous, those that are just and those that will not be justified, meaning in the sight of the Most High. Although in the sight of men, certain men are justified, are looked up, or looked unto as more righteous, or looked to as man of the Lord, or sent from the Most High. But it tells us here, the birds will resort unto their like. So no matter what, you're going to have those that are supposed to be connected with others, no matter what group, affiliation, congregation, whatever. That's just the way it works in this faith. So now the birds is resorting unto their like. That tells us a lot. Now, let me leave there and go back here, because it spoke about you make twice or twofold more the child of hell than yourself. So there's men that do that, and you see that where certain brothers will come in and follow particular men. You see the spirit they're in and mimic their spirit, or start the process of men pleasing and worshiping men, so to speak. And a lot of people try to justify that, and that's fine as well. But ultimately, the counsel of the Most High, that's what's going to matter in the end. That's what's going to stand. So here's the book of John. I want to get this real quick. This is John, the 8th chapter. This is what Yahushua said to wicked Israelites, because this kind of goes in line with what Jude said in the book of Jude. This is John 8:44. It says, ye are of your father, the devil. And we know Yahushua in context here is speaking to wicked Israelites. Ye are of your father, the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. So those that are doing the lust of their father, the devil, are those who are the ungodly, the rebellious, the stiff-necked, those who were not chosen, those that crept in, or as it said in the book of Jude, in the NLT, who wormed their way into the churches. So that's currently going on today. So there's no congregation of followers who can profess to being, all righteous, or that they're the house of David, or that they have all knowledge, or whatever. Now, men do say that, and that's fine, and they can believe that. We can believe, any manner of things that we want to believe, but through the precepts, we see that that's not so, because it tells us in Ecclesiastes 7:20, there's no righteous man that walketh the earth and that sins not. Yahushua being the only one. So there's men that's doing the will of the Most High on the left hand and on the right hand. The more we read the scriptures and understand them, we want to try to line up with doing what the Most High says in righteousness and repent from wickedness. This is Proverbs, should be the 14th chapter. Proverbs 14. In verse 7, it says, go from the presence of a foolish man when thou perceiveth not in him the lips of knowledge. So when we perceive that a man is not going to actually adhere to sound doctrine, which is the truth, and sound counsel, which is the word of the Most High, how everything is established. Proverbs 14:7 again says, go from the presence of a foolish man when thou perceivest not in him the lips of knowledge. When you see that a man is not going to actually, adhere to this truth, when you see a man is not operating with wisdom, that makes him a fool, which ultimately means he's evil. Now, in the NLT, it says, stay away from fools, for you don't want to find knowledge. It says, for you won't find knowledge on their lips. They're not going to be completely operating, although they could have a form, of godliness, the Bible says, but denying the power thereof, which ultimately that will be denying the word, starting with denying the word. So they could, exhibit certain forms and attributes of a person that is a believer. But once again, you will know them by their fruit, and the Most High is going to reveal of what every sort man's works are. So certain things are still to be revealed. Now, so you're supposed to go from the presence of a foolish man, a man that's unrighteous. Let's see what it says right here for foolish man. Let me see if I can get this. Because what you see oftentimes, the more you're in this thing, is that it's a lot of back and forth. A man that's stupid, a simpleton, arrogant one, silly, foolish. Now, you see a lot of back and forth, and you see certain men going back and forth in groups, going back and forth with each other for years. And oftentimes it leads, the majority of the time, I'll say 9.99 out of 10, it leads to nothing. And the reason why it's a nothing burger oftentimes is because there's a lot of ego and pride that's with the men that won't actually hear the message because they've already, precluded and already predetermined that certain men can't say nothing to them, and that's okay too, because everything is by the will of the Most High. That's all by the wisdom of the Most. All by the will of the Most High. So when you see that, you're supposed to just go ahead and say, you know what? Hey, well, why should I waste my time to try to convince someone of something? Because a lot of these men that said that's in the faith have converted men to being, twice the child of hell. Certain men have warped the minds and the spirit of would-be believers, but that's by the will of the Most High, to not actually adhere to sound and wise counsel or righteousness. So when you see that and you perceive that, you're supposed to just actually separate yourself from men like that. So the back and forth never does anything, because people don't take heed to the scriptures, and actually follow that in spirit and in truth. Proverbs 23:9, speak not in the ears of a fool, for he will despise the wisdom of thy words. So the reason, once again, it says, go from the presence of a foolish man, a man that won't hear the truth, right? That would constitute a foolish man, when thou perceivest not in him the lips of knowledge. So once again, Proverbs 23:9, speak not in the ears of a fool, for he will despise the wisdom of thy words. He's not going to hear the wisdom of thy words, because he's already concluded that what you're saying doesn't matter, because it's not coming from someone that he feels is approved enough. Well, the word is the approval. That's the approving authority. What does the word say? I was listening to the brother Mashak today, and he was doing a beautiful video, and he was speaking, and something pricked my ears. And he was speaking about how a man that's not even in the faith, he was saying something, and it convinced him that he was wrong about something, because he was speaking truth, not because whether he was in the truth or not, what he was saying was true. That's why it says, the scriptures say what they say here, speak not in the ears of a fool, for he will despise the wisdom of thy words. So the brother was able to receive what was being said by a man that wasn't even in the faith, because what he was saying was actually true. But a man that's going to despise wisdom, hey, you have to remove yourself from him. And that's the best thing you can do. The more that you're in, in this thing, in this truth, I should say, is you find it that's the best thing to do. Men have differences for different reasons, various reasons. Some of it is because they can't walk together. Some of it is ego, pride. Some of it is whatever the reason is. People get offended All these things happen, but the Most High is the ultimate judge of all things. So you have to leave it to him. This is Romans 16 and verse 17. It says, now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine which ye have learned, and avoid them. Now, let's read it in the NOT. Romans 16 and 17. And now I make one more appeal, my dear brothers and sisters, watch out for people who cause divisions. So it says, watch out for those who cause divisions. So you would be watching with a watchful eye and an attentive ear to see who that would be. It says, watch out for people who cause divisions and upset people's faith by teaching things contrary to what you have been taught. Stay away from them. So also those who would not want to hear sound counsel, or who would not want to hear the words of truth, whether they like a person or not. So it said to avoid them. So the word mark here goes into scopeo, and it goes into to look, to observe, to contemplate, to take heed to thyself. Now, we want to take heed of what the scriptures are saying, because if we are looking to be saved and justified by the Most High ultimately, then we would take heed to these things, because scriptures like this make it clear what could happen if we don't. Galatians 6 and 1, brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. So we would consider what the scriptures are saying, no matter who it's coming from. We would consider the words and see how, if it applies to us, you know, because we could be tempted as well. The Most High could actually judge us or put us in particular situations to be judged and then execute judgment, just because we won't actually take heed to the things he's saying. Because it's easy to have the mindset to say, well, this guy can't tell me nothing, you know, or you don't know more than me, or you're not in my group. And once again, that's all a part of being in this faith. You got the godly and the ungodly. You got the righteous and you got the wicked. The Most High set up 2 against 2 and 1 against another, as we know in the book of Ecclesiasticus, the 33rd chapter. So that's just the way that it works. So now it says, lest thou also be tempted. So we would consider these words, because we could be given over, you know, to particular temptations and judgments just for not doing that. And the big part of the back and forth again is because men have already decided, or, you know, concluded what the order is from the Most High. See, the order that's in heaven is not the order on the earth. So Yahweh Shai is returning to bring order to the earth with the nations, but also within the nation of Israel. Jacob's trouble and eventually the return of Yahweh Shai is going to bring forth the actual righteous order of the heavens. Because the order that's here on the earth is not the order in the heavens. Now, let's show a few precepts that make it pretty clear. This is Matthew 19. Let's go there. Matthew 19 in verse 30, the words of Yahweh Shai. It says, but many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first. I'll read it again, Matthew 19 and 30. It says, but many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first. It's very simple. Now let's go over a chapter. Let's go over to Matthew 20 in verse 16. It says, so the last shall be first, the words of Yahweh Shai again. So the last shall be first, and the first last. For many, it says, be called, but few chosen. So the last are going to be first, and the first are going to be last. So the order in the heavens still has to be established here on the earth, as it says in the Lord's Prayer, where it tells us, our Father who art in heaven, holy or hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So that's yet to be established here on the earth, although men have already decided that. And that's dangerous, and I'm going to show why. Let's go back here to Ecclesiasticus, but let's go to the 7th chapter. That's dangerous, because with that way of thinking, then what we're doing is superseding the Most High and saying, well, this is what I believe to be true, unless it's been given by divine revelation, or we can, you know, tie it directly with scripture. And all we can do is just move according to the Spirit and move, according to His word to the best of our ability, but not to do what the scriptures say, which is to presume things. There's a fine line between establishing order or following righteousness and also presuming things or assuming things. This is Ecclesiasticus 7 and verse 4. See, that's the lack of humility that's amongst our people. The Jude was speaking about amongst the churches, men that have wormed in, but that's a lack of humility in general by and large of our nation. Ecclesiasticus 7 and verse 4, seek not of the idle one or the Lord preeminence. That's to be in charge, to be ruling, to be, the head, the top person. Seek not of the idle one preeminence, neither of the king the seat of honor. So you have those that are sitting in the seat of honor. And the Lord said the things that are highly esteemed among men are an abomination in the sight of the Most High. In that if you think of yourself as something when you are nothing, you deceive your own self. Verse 5, justify not thyself before the idle one, and boast not of thy wisdom before the king. And you see the boasting of wisdom. Who know the most, who do the most videos, things like that. What group is the top group? There's been Hebrew awards given out for who the top group, all this stuff. And then men constantly speaking about who do the most and who know the most, who taught the most people, all this kind of stuff, that the truth, the doctrine belonged to them. This is what you hear. Ecclesiasticus 7 and 6, seek not to be judged, being not able to take away iniquity. Because Yahushua has been given that office and that lot, right, as the chief high priest. Lest at any time thou fear the person of the mighty, and that's what you see heavily, respect of persons, men pleasing, eye service. It says, lest at any time thou fear the person of the mighty. So a lot of people have fear of other men in the faith because of their position, because of their perceived authority, because of decrees, so on and so forth, because of affiliation. Lest at any time thou fear the person of the mighty, and a stumbling block in the way of thy uprightness. Then that becomes a stumbling block to you doing what's right. As it tells us in the Ecclesiasticus, the 4th chapter. Don't let the reverence of any man cause us to fall. Let me just get that real quick. This is Ecclesiasticus 4, should be 22, I believe. Ecclesiasticus 4 and verse 22, accept no person against thy soul, and let not the reverence of any man cause thee to fall. Well, that makes perfect sense when we go back to Ecclesiasticus 7. Makes perfect sense. Ecclesiasticus 7 and verse 6, seek not to be judged, being not able to take away iniquity, lest at any time thy fear the person of the mighty, and a stumbling block in the way of thy uprightness. That becomes a stumbling block to a lot of people. Fearing the person of the mighty. Now, one might say, well, why is that a stumbling block? Let's get this precept here. It gives more clarity to how that men pleasing, eye service, how that can become a stumbling block to men that are in the faith. Because those men that wormed into the faith, into the ministry in Jude, I'll keep going back and referencing that, well, they would be here now, and they would have set up, or be set up through, different means and different ways, and it would be people that would be hearkening unto that and following that. Now, ultimately, that's all by the will of the Most High. And who's righteous and who's wicked is all by the will of the Most High. Now, the scriptures speak about how the wicked are going to be severed from the just. We read that earlier, or a precept that went into that, but that's still established by the Most High. That's yet to be done. Now, this is Ecclesiasticus 23 and 19. It says, such men only fear the eyes of men, and knoweth not that the eyes of the Adawan or the Most High are 10,000 times brighter than the sun, beholding all the ways of men and considering the most secret parts. So it says men fear the eyes of men by nature. Such men only fear the eyes of men. So an unrighteous man ain't going to take heed to the words of the Most High. A righteous man is going to take heed, even if in a situation like the brother Mashak said today in this video, even if it was someone that wasn't even in the faith, he said something that was actually right according to the word, because that's going to prick you in the spirit. The men have already established, who's righteous and who's not and who's wicked, and they already have sought preeminence and established everything already. Then hey, that's fine, because the Most High is going to show in the end. So this wisdom is supposed to keep us from a lot of stupidity, and that back and forth that I've been speaking about, it always leads to nothing. This wisdom is supposed to protect us. It's supposed to be like a shield unto us. Because it's a saying also, that there's three sides to every story: my side, your side, and the truth. So when you see all the back and forth over and over again, you realize, well, when is the truth ever established? Well, the Most High has to establish it through judgment, or ultimately through actually bringing division, or justifying a situation or people or persons, ultimately justifying those that will be righteous in his sight. Now, let me go back to Proverbs. Let's go back to Proverbs. Proverbs 29 and verse 26. Proverbs 29. Let's start at verse 25, actually. Proverbs 25 and 29, it says, the fear of man bringeth a snare. That's why it says that you would fear the person of the mighty, and a stumbling block be put before your way. The fear of a man bringeth a snare, but whoso putteth his trust in the Lord Yahweh shall be safe. Many seek the ruler's favor, so many such men only fear the eyes of men. Many people fear those that have a certain level of power and rule and authority. Many seek the ruler's favor, but every man's judgment cometh from the Lord Yahweh. But ultimately, the Most High has to judge the matter for it to be truly known as righteous or wicked. Because a man could be right about some things and wrong. As it says in Wisdom of Solomon in the 9th chapter, hardly do we guess aright in things upon the earth. So many seek the ruler's favor, but every man's judgment cometh from the Lord Yahweh. But the ultimate judgment, so that's why it says that don't, in Corinthians, don't judge any matter before the time. You let the Most High be the one to ultimately show what is and what is not. Now let's go here. It brings this to mind. This is 1 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter. 1 Thessalonians 2. I'm going to go down here to verse 4. 1 Thessalonians 2 and 4. But as we were allowed of the Most High to be put in trust with the gospel, the truth. So we've all been entrusted with this truth. Let's keep reading. Even so we speak, not as pleasing men, but the Most High, which trieth our hearts. So it just told us that the judgment ultimately cometh from the Adawan. The judgment comes ultimately from the Most High. Proverbs 29 and verse 26. Many seek the ruler's favor, but every man's judgment cometh from the Lord Yahweh. 1 Thessalonians 2 and 4. But as we were allowed of the Most High to be put in trust with the gospel, that was us being given the understanding. We were entrusted. Even so we speak, not as pleasing men. So we don't speak pleasing men, as it says in Acts 20. Is that Acts 20 and 27? Where it says, I have not shunned to declare the whole counsel of the Most High. Not as pleasing men, but the Most High, which trieth our hearts. Is ultimately Yahweh Shem Shai is trying all of our hearts. Now I'm going to read this in NLT. Let's see how it sounds. 1 Thessalonians 2 and 4. For we speak as messengers approved by the Most High, to be entrusted with the good news. Our purpose is to please the Most High, not people. He alone examines the motives of our hearts. He alone. The Most High alone is the true judge of man. And he examines, it says, the motives of our hearts. Doesn't mean we can't judge, of course, because he that is spiritual judge of all things. But he alone is the righteous judge. So this is Jeremiah 17 in verse 10, going to the point. It says, I, the Lord Yahweh, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways and according to the fruit of his doings. So that's by the will of the Most High God, Yahweh. And I wanted to get another one. I was thinking about, we ended off through the Spirit. Went a little longer than what I thought, but hey, everything's subject to the Spirit of Yahweh Shem Shai, as we know. So every man's judgment cometh from Yahweh Shem Shai. And the Most High is trying our hearts. And he's going to give every man according to what he do and how he live. I can't think of the precept again through the Spirit, and that's the Spirit. I'll just end the video with that. Before I close it out, I want to give all praises, even the honor and glory to the God of heaven and earth, Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Bahashim Rakakwadash. All praises be to the Most High God, Yahweh, and His only begotten Son, whose name is Yahweh Shai. Honors be to the elect elders of the nation of Israel, Barakim La Habayath Madawadah, which means blessings to the house of David, which you brothers laboring, and to the Akim Wa Akwath, which are the brothers and sisters that also listen and believe on the glorious gospel being preached throughout the four corners of the earth. And to you I say Shalom, Shalom, and Barakatham, and Barakim Them Yah called Bakaryam to all the elect, Akim Wa Akwath, brothers and sisters, Wa Banyam, and the children. Shalom and Barakatham.